Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrea Gonzalez with Trellis Strategies. We are in our fourth Trellis Strategies 360 discussion series, and in this series, we are discussing institutional transformation to empower modern learners. Today is our second discussion in this series, and we'll specifically be discussing how institutions can rethink or perhaps consider evolving their course scheduling to allow modern learners more accessibility to post-secondary education. Our discussion today will be led by our President and CEO, Dr. Debra Chromy. And participant videos are off, but we do encourage you to share questions or comments in the chat or in the Q&A. And we will respond to those questions at the end of our discussion. So, Debra, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, Andrea, so much for all the work you do behind the scenes to pull us all together and line up really great panelists. And you're all in for a treat today because we have two amazing panelists. As Andrea mentioned, I am Debra Chromy. I'm President and CEO here at Trellis. And with us, we have Dr. Shonda Gibson. She's the Senior Associate Vice Chancellor and Chief Transformation Officer at Texas A&M University. And we also have Dr. Susan Guzman-Trevino, who is Vice President of Academic Affairs and Student Services at Temple College. So excited to have them both. As Andrea mentioned, we've been doing the 360 discussion series for 3 or 4 years now. And this year, or this series is focused on institutional transformation to empower modern learners. And by modern learners, we are really talking about those adult students, those that don't follow your traditional 18-year-old coming right out of high school. It could include them, but it includes a much broader look. And I heard a statistic the other day that only 19% of the current college-going population is your traditional 18-year-old student. And that's pretty amazing if you look back over time, how that has transformed. So in thinking about that, we have to think about the services and how we make education available. So today's topic is an introduction to institutional transformation, really rethinking course scheduling. And we're lucky to have two individuals, as I mentioned, who have some experience in this, and some of you on the phone may as well, but we're going to learn from some experts as to their experience and how that went. So first, as I mentioned, Dr. Shonda Gibson. Shonda is a catalyst for innovation, dedicated to unlocking the magic of education and student success. With extensive leadership experience in corporate and industry, as well as higher education, she fosters continuous improvement and excellence. As Chief Transformation Officer and Senior Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Texas A&M University System, she oversees a team focused on academic programs, policy, student affairs, faculty innovation, digital learning, and institutional effectiveness. Dr. Gibson champions transformative educational initiatives and partnerships. So that's a lot, Shonda. So excited to have you here and to learn from your experience. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Super happy to be here.
Great. And we also, as I mentioned, have Dr. Susan Guzman-Trevino, currently serving as Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs and Student Services at Temple College. Susan provides leadership and support for the college's academic and technical programs, as well as for student success efforts. Through various collaborative efforts, she works closely with the school district partners, other community colleges, four-year institutions and universities, the community and local businesses as well. She leads the college's Center for Teaching and Learning, CTL, and Quality Enhancement Plan, Focus to Finish, which I think we're going to hear more about. Both were instrumental in implementing 8-week classes, which I think is phenomenal. She also serves as lead for Temple College's participation in Talent Strong Texas Pathways, Rural Pathways, Caring Campus, and Achieving the Dream. So again, Susan, so pleased to have you with us today and for you to share your knowledge and expertise with us.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Great. All right. With that, we're going to jump in. So as I mentioned, I will just talk a little bit about here at Trellis Strategies, how we think about the modern learner. So we base our work around helping entities to understand and adapt to this modern learner. And I'm going to share a little quote from our Addressing the Rising Cost of Attendance in Higher Education in Texas, a brief that we put out recently. So just to sort of set the context here, let me just start by sharing this with you. The cost of college continues to rise. To cope with financial pressures, many students reduce their course loads or take breaks from their studies, leading to extended graduation timelines and higher overall costs. This creates further limits in their ability to succeed, and it exacerbates inequalities in higher education and ultimately reduces the value of our investment in students' education. So when we think about course scheduling, as the brief states, the cost of college is rising, which deters students from pursuing post-secondary education. Removing as many barriers as possible can improve post-secondary accessibility and student success. So when people think of student success supports, we normally think about basic needs: financial aid, academic support, and other basic needs supports. Administrative processes are commonly overlooked, but are impactful contributors to student success. I'm going to share a little story. When I did my MBA, this was years ago, but I was a night student, and all of the services were available from 9 to 5. So as somebody going to school in the evening or outside of the norm, because I worked during the day, I would either have to take time off or during my lunch hour, go over and be able to do the administrative work that I needed to do. And that was really, I mean, I made it through, but that was really, I'm going to just say it, a pain in the butt. So if we think about the fact that more than 80%, I say 81%, are these modern learners or folks that don't follow a traditional path, we really have to think about everything that we do, including course scheduling, to be able to accommodate that population. So course scheduling is an intricate process involving the consideration of space availability, enrollment levels, degree process of students, bus schedules, transportation in general, academic calendars, and many other campus-specific factors. If courses are offered in formats and at times students can attend, this makes accessing post-secondary education easier. So I'm going to start off, I've talked enough, so let's hear from each of you about what prompted your campuses to consider making changes to your course schedule. And I can see Susan on my screen, so I'm going to start with you, Susan.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, great topic, great question. So we were at a place where we were researching best practices for student success, and we were hearing great things coming out of some sister community colleges in Texas. And at the same time, we were also preparing for our decennial accreditation review. So, just thinking about what our quality enhancement plan project might be. But we decided to pay a visit to one of the colleges, Amarillo College, and they hosted a poverty summit. And so we took a team of 4 and really just dug into the changes that they had made, but also looking at their successes. Their student success rates had been impacted. Their conversion of part-time to full-time status had been impacted positively. Their withdrawal rates and things like that. And so we also researched some other community colleges that were doing similar things, and then brought that all back to the campus and really came away with 2 main possibilities for topics that we wanted to pursue further. And one of them was 8-week classes, but really just hearing the advantages of it. And it made so much sense to hear that. For example, and we saw this to be true with 16-week classes, it's usually about week 10 that students life happens and something happens and they give up because they've still got 6 more weeks to go. But we heard over and over again from not only Amarillo, but other colleges that with 8-week classes, if something happens in week 6, they know I can do it. I've got 2 weeks left. I can make it. So it prompted students for success to complete the course and gain the confidence to continue. So that was what started us looking, and as we brought those ideas back to campus, we got more people involved, and sent a larger team back to Amarillo to talk more to their faculty and to their staff and to their students.
How long was that process, Susan, from when you had that first visit until you actually implemented these 8-week classes?
It was about a year and a half, to really get, get voices from our campus. We did some surveys with students, faculty, and staff. We knew that was going to be huge, right? And thinking about whether or not faculty wanted to pursue that. Because the other great idea that we came back from Amarillo was their level of support for non-academic barriers. Mm-hmm. And so they have an advocacy resource center. We had a food pantry per se, but we've really, because of that influence, we've established our own circle of support who were able to provide, again, great resources for, non-academic barriers for students. But the other topic about the 8-week classes really hit home with our teams and with our students. And we just, as a college, decided to pursue that.
So how long have those been in place, Susan?
So we, the best laid plans, right? We started with professional development, and then with a plan to launch full force in the fall of 2020. And of course, we all know what happened in 2020, but we at that point decided to go ahead and launch it rather than delay, although we weren't able to launch it in the exact way that we had hoped. I mean, we had purchased all this wonderful marketing, these materials, mugs, flags, pens that said focus to finish, that we were going to pass out at registration for the fall. And of course, none of that happened. That had to wait for a year. But we launched it nonetheless. And then as, things began to return post-COVID, we've, been able to get refocused back onto the original plan for implementing that. But so we've been doing this for a few years now, but continually thinking about improvements and really trying to get back to the initial intent that we had when we launched it.
Susan, I have so many more questions for you, but I'm going to put them on hold for a minute. I'm going to bring Shonda into this conversation and have her talk about what they've done as well.
Sure. So in 2019, similar timeline here, we formed a community of practice with enrollment managers across the entire system. So we had all 11 of our VPs for enrollment come together, and we have participated in a network improvement workshop with NASH, created some really good collaboration across the system schools. And I would say the big takeaway was that everybody agreed we need to expand the focus to include freshman students, transfer and graduate students, but also to very strategically and intentionally focus on recovery of stopped out students. And most of those fit this category that you mentioned earlier, Deborah, and same timeline, Susan, that you're speaking of. But I will say that I was very thankful that we started that work just about that time, because never before did a group of people need to be working together than in the spring of 20. So we dug into that stop out student population. We developed a partnership with Re-Up Education, and we also sought out a grant from the coordinating board. And between those two, we were really speaking with students, and we were also, we had a little bit of funding to do some additional survey work and real deep dives into visiting with students about why did you leave in the first place. And one of the things that we learned was that very often students were leaving because of course availability. They just got so far, and then it was really difficult to either manage a schedule and put it all together for what they needed to be able to continue to make progress. And then as we're working with the campuses, we learned that there was a supply issue. We just didn't have the courses that needed to go into the schedule to make good progress. And so as a quick solution, we partnered with Acadium, and we created a system, state, and national course sharing option as like I said, a quick fix so that we could take care of students' needs, right now. But that's like an emergency fix. And so thankfully, we have a lot of really smart people across the campuses, and we brought them together, and we really started doing a deeper dive into what else is going on here. And so one of the communities practice that we work with are advising leaders. And then we also have another group that we're really lucky to work with, which is a large group of department heads, chairs, from across the system. And so there's several hundred people that we're working with that we can get some real good feedback. And I will tell you, they just made it really clear that we needed to have a better understanding about course scheduling and training for effective scheduling. I say all the time, advisors can only work with what they have. And so if we build a schedule and it doesn't work to advise students, that's that. And you couple that with the fact that academic department leaders are really asked to do something that they've never done before. And often they haven't been taught to do, and they do not have the resources to do it effectively, like use holistic data and work collaboratively across an entire campus so that you can build out an effective schedule. So since we had that really solid community of practice model, and we'd really seen some good results in continuous improvement and deep diving in areas around student success, we sought out another partner and we started working with ASCU. And thank goodness they brought 4 of our campuses together and found technical support and training for those campuses through Ad Astra, and they are working on a multi-year deep dive into course scheduling. And so I think that's an important thing too. This is, like Susan said, it's not a 1 year and done, right? So right now we have 4 campuses that are deep into the work, all creating action plans for improvement. So I'll stop there.
No, that's amazing to do it across a system level. And you have over 100 people that are diving in and wanting to be part of this. And you mentioned a number of the different types of people that were involved. What barriers did you hit? I mean, you mentioned with some folks, lack of resources, or even this isn't their space. It was foreign to them to think about this in that way. What other types of barriers did you encounter, and how did you overcome them?
I think technology is one of the biggest barriers, and I think today, especially with AI, around the corner, and we're talking about Gen AI and everything that we do. Technology is moving so fast, and full transparency, it's really difficult for a university to move that quickly in their technical system, their business processes, and very often that then drives how we're going to create the schedule. And then you couple that with culture. So you have some structural problems, and then you have cultural. And if we never pause and really get those folks to the table to have this discussion, there's not a good place for every single discipline across the campus to come together and understand, when you schedule in that building at that time, this is how it impacts those students that are in another program. And so we're seeing that if we can bring more people together and we can talk about the technology and look for some solutions, and we can address that cultural barrier head on, then we're finding very little resistance to moving in a new direction.
So how long did it take? So I think about culture, and sometimes culture change can take years and years. From the beginning of this as an idea of something that you all wanted to accomplish to actually implementing it, what was the period of time?
Well, I think the enrollment management work started in 2019, and then I think it took us, a good 3 years to find a partner with ASCU. And so I would say, we're three years into that, and we've got 4 campuses that they've been able to support. Financially, we're hoping for more funding to go into that grant so it can, bring more campuses in. But it's very slow work. I would say that we're 3 years in, and we have one campus that's moved to a year-long schedule, which I will say I think that's critical in this work. We do not live 6, 8, 16 weeks at a time. Our students certainly do not. If they're trying to create some kind of plan and have an idea of what's to be expected, they can't do that 6 weeks at a time. So in the future, I see that, our campuses need to move in this direction. We have one that has fully launched. I'm so proud of that. That's a lot of work to make that happen. We've got another one with work underway, and we have a third that are just starting those discussions to get it done. So
Wow.
everybody's moving at a different pace.
Yeah, very exciting. Susan, how about you in terms of barriers that you face to trying to get this off the ground? Are they similar to what Shonda faced?
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking back about initially thinking how do we provide the professional development that faculty will need and to build a successful 8-week class, because the tendency or the initial thought was I'll just take everything I've crammed in my 16-week class and cram it into an 8-week class. And we knew that wasn't the way to go. So we brought in some professionals from not only some of the sister colleges. We know not only, I mentioned Amarillo, but there was Grayson, Kilgore, Odessa colleges that had seen great successes with the 8-week classes. So they worked with our teams. And then we brought in we have several university partners that are nearby. We brought some of them in. And then, it was just sort of a grassroots effort after that. We had some champions, faculty champions then, who were able to provide support for each other, which Shonda mentioned. I was so thankful we had begun that before March of 2020, because as soon as that happened and everything went virtual, thankfully we had begun that infrastructure to make that transition happen. But obviously we had faculty had never taught an online class before, and then to make that transition. So all the pieces we were putting in place to help build, good quality 8-week classes were instrumental in helping us move forward in a successful way for students. But I would say, the education piece about 8-week classes, we'd offered a handful of 8-week classes before that, but we knew we needed to take it on, move it up to a much larger scale. And then it was another barrier I think that initially we had was getting the departments to communicate with each other. When you start revamping your, your degree plans and thinking about what is it going to look like now with 8-week classes. And we actually have spent an entire semester convening all of the academic departments, having them sit down and map out their degrees. And it was interesting at one point in the semester when we came back, I had them come back with drafts, and they found out that all of them put their fine arts classes in the summer. They all grouped them in the summer for whatever reason, but again, we've evolved with that part. In fact, and Shonda mentioned the year-long schedule. We're launching that here as well this coming academic year. But again, it's taken lots of sessions, collaborative sessions with the departments to see what they do impacts other departments and programs as well.
I love hearing that you're both looking at going to year-long sessions. This, I think, is long overdue. And whatever the impetus was that got us there, I think it's great. Can you talk about how do you measure success, Susan? Is it in number of students who don't stop out? Are you comparing? It's so hard with the pandemic in the middle of it, right, to be able to see. But how do you measure success or impact or the fact that this is creating better results for your students?
Yeah. So we set out, because it was part of our quality enhancement plan, we set out with specific goals in mind. And one of them was to decrease our withdrawal rates, our course withdrawal rates. We've been able to meet that 10%. We set a 10% benchmark. We set a target of decreasing our, we set a target of changing our part-time to full-time status. I mean, before 2018, we were probably looking at 65% part-time, and now we're about half and half. We're about half and half. And we've increased our 2-year graduation rate by at least 4%, and then decreased our course withdrawal rates to below 10%. So, I mean, we've definitely seen some good results of it. And we continue to refine and work and see more success for students.
Yeah, that's really exciting, Susan. Shonda, same question for you. How do you measure success, especially if we look at impact on students or outcomes, and you were specifically focusing on those that had stopped out and getting them re-enrolled? What have you seen there?
Well, I've seen that none of this happens in isolation. I think that's really important. So if I was going to point to a number and say, we moved the needle on that number, I always like to remind everyone, that this is not a one and done. So when you're working with recovery of stop out students, you may need to do 5 different things. It's not the one thing that you do that's going to get them back. The same thing with, the effects of this focused work on course scheduling. I think it leads down the path of other things that you'll bring into the focus. And so then I think big things can happen. I'll give you an example. So San Antonio is one of our campuses that's furthest along with this focus on course scheduling. And from fall to spring, in the initial launch, they saw a big change in something that I thought was an interesting number that they were following, which is how many semester credit hours are your freshmen signing up for and completing effectively? And that jumped from 27% to 48% by cleaning up the schedule. So I think when you unlock the potential of some of these things, you just see a blossoming number of outcomes that can come. We have, as a whole, I can combine all the campuses, and I can say in general that grades have gone up, and DFW rates have gone down about 12% in the areas where they have focused on this intentionality around the schedule. And like I said, I don't like to give it all to one thing, because I know that these campuses are working hard on, a dozen other areas that do definitely, impact their students. But, I think the critical infrastructure piece, like you talked about at the very beginning, this is sort of the underpinning. And if we don't get that right, then the building begins to crumble. And so I really think that, I'll go ahead and attribute a lot of the success to the fact that these campuses are very focused on this intentionality around improving that schedule.
Yeah. And you talked about, San Antonio and then one campus that's already moved. So even though you worked across all campuses, everybody's implementing at a different pace, right? And what do you attribute those different paces to?
I would say it very much depends on what the bandwidth is for the campus at this time, right? So if you have change in leadership, provost, president, registrar, big positions, VP of enrollment management, any of these things that begin to really, play into this decision-making process, then that puts a big challenge on really moving the needle to a whole new way of focusing on your business operations. And then the other one, I will say, I think we're seeing across the nation at this meeting we were at last week, I learned that we're not alone in a big shift and turnover in your department chairs. So if your department leadership is changing consistently, then you're going to have department chairs that come in and, pretty much the very first semester that you're a department chair, the safest thing to do is roll that schedule. Don't make a lot of, and so that's the safe place. And if we do what's safe in more than half of the departments across a university, then you are going to see a rolled schedule that doesn't change significantly, even if your student body is changing, even if the needs are changing. And so I think back to, the very beginning, I think the education of our faculty on how this works as a holistic strategy across your campus it's just been missing for a long time. And I think that where you have leadership that's been there for a long time and you can really, focus on this. And like you said, Susan, it's years in the making. And so, that turnover really hurts the work. And the second thing I think that hurts the work the most is the technology, having access. So a campus that has access to, state-of-the-art technology, and they're able to show the data quickly and effectively with their faculty, the faculty will pay attention and they appreciate the data. But if it's something that takes a year for us to do a study and then, give them a report, it's too late by then to really quickly impact as fast as we need to. And so those who are, thankfully, some have enough tools and technology that they can really move fast in that space. So hopefully some of these supports that we're getting through different partnerships are going to help the campuses to move at a little quicker pace.
And I guess to follow up, and we've sort of touched on this, and you referred to it that it's not just one thing, right? It's just not changing the campus scheduling. It goes along with a number of other things to assist this group of, I'll call them modern learners, right? That are unlike your traditional 18-year-olds coming to campus. And also all of the other support pieces that you need to put in place for those who have other priorities in their life. Our financial wellness survey, which I believe both of your institutions participate in, has shown that a very large percentage, and maybe Andrea knows off the top of her head, I don't want to misquote it, consider themselves workers first and students second. So when you think about that in the population, have you, to my example of getting my master's, have you also adjusted availability of all the other resources that are available to those who might be doing things differently, whether it's the 8-week or the year-long schedule? And Susan, I'll start with you.
Okay. Yes, we have. And again, I think the pandemic influenced some of that, making those kinds of resources available virtually, whether that's tutoring or other kinds of support that we offer. We found opportunities here at the college to provide financial support within internally that we could give for the emergency situations, because we had started a calling campaign just to check in on students. How are you doing? And we're hearing some of the same kinds of things that we saw on the Trellis survey results. And so we knew that there were additional supports that we needed to provide. So finding funding for those kinds of things, resources, making those available, making the connections that we needed to make for students. And then looking at what, Shonda mentioned technology. Do we have the right resources technology-wise? Because we had we serve a lot of rural communities, and again, those students don't have access to internet. They don't have computers at home that they could go home and do their homework on. So how do we provide that help for them, get them connected? And so, yeah, we definitely had to think outside the box in terms of providing resources, and not only the types of resources, but the timing of the resources. With 8-week classes, it's critical that the support is made available right away, because you can't wait until mid-semester, really 4 weeks in, to start trying to make efforts to outreach and things like that. But it needs to happen, but day one, and making sure students know what they have available to them.
So does that mean your faculty have become much more involved and connected with the students and sort of paying attention who's there, who's not there, who's been late, as sort of signs that maybe something is amiss?
Absolutely. And we have an early alert system, of course. But aside from that, faculty and staff actually have the ability to recommend a student for an emergency grant. And the students, that they don't have to pay it back. But if a student comes in or reports, hey, I can't come to class, I've had a flat tire, it's an easy process. A faculty member, a staff member can do that to get them the resources that they need so they don't stop out.
Yeah, and it's interesting. If I think back, a professor would take no excuse usually for any reason for you being late. And so there is this even broader cultural transformation around how professors interact with students, right?
Yeah. I think we've all learned about grace, to give each other some grace on things.
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. Shonda, same question for you. And in the interim, Andrea has brought up the data point for me that a majority of students aged 25 and older, 62% of them, think of themselves as workers who go to school rather than students who work, which I think is fascinating. Shonda, again, same question to you. I know you alluded to it, but other changes that you make to support these students?
Yeah. And so I think, first of all, I'll give a good example of big shifts that have happened to create a partnership across the campus. And I think that's what we're talking about. I think for a long time, we've heard the other side of the house, and you hear about division at a campus. Would they do this work? We do this work. They do that work. Right. And I'm seeing very different things happening at campuses today. Prairie View is a really good example. They've created a Campus Cares, a completely different focus on serving your students, and not requiring students to go to 13 offices, but instead, bringing it all together, but in a real partnership that's different than academic affairs do their thing, student affairs do their thing, enrollment does their thing. It's really, I can't stress that enough, that where I'm seeing really big things happening, it's where that partnership has been developed. And then I think rolling it up a level, I have to brag on our system, because I think that we've taken on a lot at the system level to bring support and resources to the campuses. And we do that through, lots of ways, like I mentioned, partnerships for one, but then the other is like a real focus on a student population that, that like you're speaking about, Deborah, which is like, say, veterans. We have an office at our system level that builds together this community across the entire system that's focused on veterans and any of the supports and the challenges that exist in that space. The same thing around advising and transfer. Transfer is a key one. Well, we have a team at the system office that are working on supporting the institutions in helping them to have the appropriate technologies and business processes, and 11 different campuses coming together to work on that issue. Mental health is another one. I'm very proud to say that at the system level, we've provided a telehealth to all of the students across the entire Texas A&M University System, available 24/7. And then I would just say that I don't know that it's common, but like in our system, all of our chief academic officers, our student affairs VPs, enrollment managers, they come together quite often and put their heads together on where are you seeing challenges, where can we partner together, what needs to happen, so that we're more effectively addressing these issues. So I think those two things are probably what I would say I'm most proud of right now.
Yeah, the breaking down the barriers is a big one, and getting people to talk across the institution. Yeah. Huge. So I do want to leave some time for some questions, but I did want to ask one more, and that's related to, we see in the newspaper, and there are a lot of polls that show people are losing confidence in post-secondary education. How can institutions leverage transformation efforts to gain support from key stakeholder groups, students, the public, members of the legislature, et cetera? And do you feel that the work you're doing and that you're continuing to evolve and to rethink going forward, is that something that you think could ultimately have an impact, or maybe already has? I'll listen to your stories as to how people think about higher ed. And I'll start with Susan.
I'll jump in. Yeah. So when we were preparing to launch the 8-week classes, the academic leadership, the president, executive leadership traveled around to our 21 school districts and met with the superintendent and teams across our service area, and just pitched the idea, hey, we're moving to 8-week classes, giving them the background of it. We tried to educate as many of our constituencies as possible. And I think that was really important, engaging with people and internally as well, faculty, staff, our students. As I mentioned earlier, we had focus groups, really listen to them. And then also along with that is to share the success stories. A lot of times we just get so involved with the work, we forget that, we see the good things that are happening, but we don't share them out with people. And I think that's been really helpful for us too, is just letting people see that we have students now that started out as a part-time student, and guess what? They're graduating on time. They're not taking 4, 5, 6 years to get an associate degree. And so we have students who didn't see themselves as college material, but they took one 8-week class, and they've been able to complete their certificates and or degrees, and just the impact that has made, that culture. It's a very different culture now. And so I think the more that we can share those out, the more beneficial, because people hear about that and they want to be part of it.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with you more. 16 weeks or a semester sounds like a long time. 8 weeks does not, to give something a try, right? And could I assume that an 8-week class costs less than a traditional 16-week class?
It typically costs the same. It's it's the same price. They're still getting, the same level of education. So a lot of things are happening in our area that allow students to have a good rate for college classes. So, but
Yeah, yes, I agree.
Mhm.
Yes. Same question for you, Shonda. And in particular, would love to also hear what you heard from others at the conference last week around what other institutions are doing, and is this going to be a move forward, like a true movement?
So, yeah, and I totally agree, Susan, with, the stories, success stories, and engaging early and often. I think those are the two deal breakers here. If we don't do that, then we can't really ever gain support from all these key stakeholder groups that you were talking about, Deborah. But I would say also the why, like, why are we transforming? Why are we changing? Why are we doing this? I think for all the groups that we talk about, faculty, students, the public, the legislature, they want to know why. Connect those changes directly to what we are expecting. What is the outcome that we're really trying to go for? And we're not always real clear about that. Sometimes it's a little foggy and murky, and it's hard to tell. And we're just not very transparent about what exactly are we trying to accomplish. And then in higher ed, I just have to say we're terrible about telling the success stories. We just don't do a very good job on that. And I'm going to venture to say we have way more successes than we do failures, but we just don't talk enough about them. We don't talk about the great things that we're doing. We let the negative just, overshadow. I could sum up last week. So if one of my friends is watching, we work with AQ, which is a faculty instructional excellence focus, which is the other linchpin in student success. I'll throw that in there. And so one of my friends with that group was in a workshop with us last week, and I thought this was real interesting, Deborah, because he said, think for a moment. If you want to know what you can improve on, what are our students talking about at Thanksgiving around the table? Mm-hmm. When somebody says, "How's it going?" What are they talking about? Mm-hmm. And if you have students, like we have one, that's 18 and just went to college this last semester. And sometimes I have to get through the few negative layers that he wants to share with me about a few things that went wrong to really get at the core of, now tell me about the good experience that you're having. We have to really crack that open and try to get it out. And sadly, I think it's the same sometimes with folks in higher ed. I think that sometimes we get around the Thanksgiving table and we want to empty out and share, but in the meantime, the legislature is only hearing those negative stories. So we've got to make space and really force ourselves to talk about the really positive, good things that are happening while we're also identifying it and working on these challenges and barriers that are there. And we just don't give enough airtime to that, So I think this year that'll be the thing that I think we really focus on is where can we plug in these success stories?
I couldn't agree more. And it's funny because I sometimes say this to my staff in different departments. They don't get a lot of kudos because everything is running on time, clockwork, everything is checking where it's supposed to be. So there's no big aha, but we wouldn't be running if those things weren't happening.
Exactly.
So it's sometimes rewarding, appreciating, and sharing the news of things going well as opposed to what's broken. I couldn't agree more. I have a couple more questions, but I do want to open it up and see, Andrea, have you had any questions come in from our participating audience?
Yes, we have one I think might be geared towards Susan. Are all of your classes, but either one of you speak to this, are all of your classes 8 weeks or are there exceptions for some programs?
Yes, we did make some exceptions for some programs. Some of our health professions classes, for example, really couldn't go to 8-week classes due to various accreditation restrictions. And then for the other departments, we set up a waiver process. And so that departments, and we have a waiver committee that then listened in on, looked at data about why a certain course couldn't move to 8 weeks. And so over the past few years, we have revisited some of those departments that initially got waivers, because what we didn't want to happen was, say, mandate that every course had to be 8 weeks and then have faculty who really weren't, involved in the professional development or really committed to making them successful. So we've continued that training, that professional development, that peer-to-peer. There's a lot of peer-to-peer work that goes on here that we're so fortunate to have. And that continues even to today. So that some that were not initially 8-week are transitioning to 8-week.
That's great. So I have another one, and that is with the movement of some of your institutions to year-round classes. Are you expecting to see or hoping to see 3-year graduations for those that are in, a traditional 4-year program, or even faster for those that are in a 2-year program, maybe a year and a half?
I think so. I mean, traditionally, the research for community colleges, the data has shown that, more students take more than 2 years to get a 2-year degree, right? And have taken more than 2 years. And we're trending back the other way. And I think if we can get more students to graduate with a 2-year degree in 2 years or less, we also have certificates that, can be completed in a semester. And so, especially with all of the new workforce credentials that we're seeing across the state, we're seeing more completions of those as well. But those are also being set up in the 8-week semester. So yes, we definitely see students graduating on time and early.
Yeah. Shonda?
Yeah, I think the language is shifting. I think we're moving away from talking so much about a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree, and instead, which I'm very happy to see, is that we're talking more about the credentials, the skills, the competencies, and I think we've gone on too long talking about 4-year degrees, right? Because what is that? It's very different, like Susan said, from department to department. Where it may be commonplace for an 8-week course to work in one area, it's never going to work somewhere else. And I think we have to have that flexibility in delivery, but we also need to be flexible in this language, because maybe it's not a 4-year degree that somebody's after. They're looking for skills and competency, and they're looking to be able to engage in a specific area in a high quality way. And so my hope is that we'll shift to talking more like that in the next dozen years than you just went through and checked through all the boxes.
Yeah, I think we're hearing a lot about credentials, and a credential can be a certification, a credential can be a degree of some sort. And to your point, people are now thinking about education as getting the skills, and it will be a credential of some sort, and not getting upset that somebody stops out if they've gotten what they need to be able to get the career or get on the career path that they wanted to, which is the reason they went, right? And thinking about it differently. I couldn't agree more, Shonda. Did we have another question pop up, Andrea? I thought I saw something pop up.
Yeah, thanks. How do the 8-week schedules impact student financial aid awards?
Yeah, that was a learning process for financial aid, but we worked with our financial aid department, looked at also again at what our sister colleges, how they handle the financial aid awards. But the students receive the awards for the second 8-week when the second 8-week comes around, and so that's in some respects it's treated as a different semester, although it's all part of the 16-week structure.
Great, thanks.
And then we have another one that came through in the chat. With an 8-week schedule, are students able to double up and possibly take 24 hours in one 16-week semester?
We don't encourage that. Typically in thinking and, envisioning the 8 weeks schedule, we see them taking 2 or 3 the first 8 weeks and 2, maybe the second, getting 15 hours in. And very rarely, but we have seen students take 21 hours. Again, it depends on the student. It has to be a special case, and those have to be approved at, at this level. But more often than not, it's taking 15, 18 hours in the 2 8-week semesters together.
That makes sense. I had a feeling the answer to that was going to be, well, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering if you have found a change in companies or surrounding businesses recruiting or being interested in hiring your graduates, if your scheduling has evolved and it's appealed and attracted to more students. Perhaps you have become appealing to more or different companies for hiring those students.
I think where we've seen that is we've added some workforce programs in advanced manufacturing and also engineering technology. And companies we see really like the fact that our students get a credential in 8 weeks. So if maybe they need somebody who's trained in safety, they get it at 8 weeks. They don't have to spend an entire 16-week semester earning that certification. So that seems to be an area where that's more obvious, more apparent that businesses are eager. And in our area in Central Texas, we have a lot of growth in terms of major companies that are moving to the area, and they're looking for our graduates to have those certifications. So it's been a plus in that respect for sure.
Any more, Andrea?
Yeah, thank you for that. That is really interesting to see evolve for you all. So in the chat, we have a wonderful comment, share, and then also question. And I'm just going to get to the question. It seems like if someone is squeezing in an 8-week course, their time is limited. And so are there ways in which your campuses have offered resources like student support resources, maybe tutoring, maybe financial aid, counseling hours, anything that's outside of the 8 to 5?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we certainly have. We have incorporated more embedded tutors in the classes. So these are tutors who are in the online classes, there to support the faculty and the students in the classes. We have a great partnership with our Texas A&M University, Central Texas. And so we have some of their students who are also serving as our supplemental tutors, embedded tutors. We have our faculty who not only keep, of course, regular office hours, but they also have what they call faculty student hours, so that they're specifically for, especially if it's a math and science class, they need that extra support. We do now offer support services outside of the regular. We're open like 8 to 6, so we have evening hours and some weekend hours as well.
Are there evening classes as well?
We have some evening classes. That's another area where we're building out a full evening schedule instead of just offering a hodgepodge of evening classes. But we're working. That's another one of our projects. So we've seen the demand for those decrease a little bit with the onset of so many online options, but now people are coming back and looking for some evening options as well.
Great.
Shonda, what about with the TAMU system schools? Is there creative academic advising options or tutoring options or financial aid counseling that's after 5 p.m.?
Yeah, I think that across the 11 universities, they've done a really good job about meeting students where they are in a variety of ways, in person, online, daytime, evening. I would venture to say if there's a university or college that came out of COVID and didn't make those changes, they're in big, deep trouble right now. Because, we've already, I think we already had to move to many of those types of refocus ourselves on a different type of service that our students need. And then I'll throw in another thing too that, like I briefly mentioned earlier that, great teaching, I think, is something that hasn't really been talked about a lot. is, that whole focus. When we're talking about student success, we talk about a lot of other stuff. But I would say that is probably one of my most proud resource that I've brought to our system schools is a focus on excellence in teaching and how do our faculty learn how to be highly effective teachers. Because if you have highly effective teaching, it takes the load off of a lot of your support services. And so we've seen great results in that work. And I think, what a powerful thing to have a really good quality schedule and very high quality instruction. You pair those things up and man, you just took down a lot of barriers that students live with. So
yeah, that's great.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Do you want to share? You put in the chat a link to the Ask You course book or playbook.
Yeah, that is a document that the cohort of universities that have come together, which is about a dozen universities across the nation. And this is the playbook, the course scheduling. And I would encourage any college university department, if you really want to think about the impact on your students and get into the granular details, that is a really good document to read.
Great. Any last questions before we close out?
Actually, I don't know if that was shared in the whole group chat, Shonda.
No, I just shared it with Debra. I didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah. I hate to share without permission.
Yeah.
I want to thank you both very much. This has been amazing, so informative. Thank you both for sharing what you're doing on your campuses. I can't wait to see what comes in the next iterations as you continue to move forward and really think about how to provide, as you said, great teaching, great course schedule, the supports to help make every student who wants to pursue an education, I'm going to say it, a credential of some type, be able to do that and make it through and get a great, get onto a great career path. So Shonda, Susan, thank you so much for your time today. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for allowing it. It's been a great discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I appreciate it. We'll look forward to seeing you all next month.